Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I am your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas is senior writer Mike Craven. Craven, we just watched the CFP committee release their brackets, their seedings. I want to say first off, before we just absolutely skewer them, that I think they had a very difficult job this year because I think there's a lot of deserving teams and a lot of precedents that could have been set. You know, it's like Alabama and BYU. Does a conference championship game loss hurt you? Notre Dame, who are the best teams right now? Because Notre Dame's on a 10-game win streak. But Miami, who beat Notre Dame, does head-to-head matter? It has to matter, I feel like. And then there's Duke. Can a power conference champion get left out when they have 5 losses? So what did you make of how the CFP committee released their bracket?
Yeah, I think it was probably the worst committee that we've had so far in the CFP.
All right, let's start off hot.
Now, some of that is it might have been the hardest decisions that they faced outside of leaving an undefeated Florida State off. This year probably is one where it would have been cleaner to still be in a 4-team playoff. Texas Tech, Indiana, Georgia, Ohio State, just cut it off there. Everyone else has a lot of question marks, and then you get into the debate on the back end. But yeah, I think that I think what frustrates most people is the inconsistencies and the hypocrisies within the explanations. We can typically, it's like a baseball umpire, right? It's like, I don't care what balls and strikes you're calling, just keep calling them the same. And today, Alabama doesn't move down a single spot for losing by 21 points to Georgia in a game that felt like they lost by 40 in. You and I rushed for more yards this week in conference championship games than Alabama did. Like, they went backwards. But then somehow, and I can buy the argument of, well, you gotta rank these teams off the 12 data points. Not everybody had 13, so how do you hold the 13th against them? Fine, I'll give you that. Explain why BYU dropped down a spot that then put Miami and Notre Dame back to back, to where then Miami somehow is able to jump over Notre Dame, because according to the committee, you can only take head-to-head into account if they're literally touching each other.
Yeah, that is why BYU moved back, because I think the committee realized that they had a massive crisis on their hand if Notre Dame got in over Miami when Miami had the head-to-head. So they had to move Miami and Notre Dame right next to each other. BYU was the sacrificial lamb, and then Miami gets in. I think the committee for weeks now has wanted to put Miami in over Notre Dame, but they couldn't. They should have done it on Tuesday, I think, is the argument that Reese Davis and a lot of the ESPN broadcasters were making. And I think it's a correct one. It just shows that the week by week selection committee show don't pay attention to it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and they set it up this way. They put Alabama far enough ahead to where they couldn't drop them from losing to Georgia. And they put BYU right in the middle of Notre Dame and Miami to have this fail-safe, to where if BYU gets in or wins the Big 12 championship, they're in, and Notre Dame and Miami are both out. But they did it knowing that if BYU lost, they were going to drop BYU down. That would put these two next to each other, and then Miami could jump. What bothers me is that Alabama doesn't drop. And to me, Notre Dame and Miami both have better cases to be in the playoff than Alabama does. And what I hate about these conference championship game arguments is that, and really, I think the SEC does this in general. SEC fans only want the positives. They never want the negatives, right? They want the advantages that come with playing the hardest schedule in the world, but they don't want to come to account for the losing.
Yeah.
They want the conference championship to not matter at all, unless it's other teams losing in a conference championship. And then that's proof positive that they couldn't hang with the SEC anyway, right? So Alabama was going to maybe get a first round bye if they beat Georgia, but there's no negative impact to it.
Exactly. And Texas did the same thing with the Ohio State non-conference game. Like, do you just want these to only be exhibition games that can only help you and can't hurt you? That's part of the stakes of sports is you put it on the line and it can hurt you a little bit. So
and Vanderbilt's at home for not playing any non-conference games against anybody good, and they went 10-2. Right? Yeah. So like they want to play in a blackjack table without the possibility to lose. Like when they win, it's a positive. When they lose, well, it's like, well, we played Ohio State and nobody else did, and I don't know. Like if we want to have the Texas conversation, Texas wasn't out because they were 9-3. Texas was out because of how they were 9-3.
Yeah, I agree. Like 100%. I mean, real quick on the Texas conversation, because I don't want to spend a whole half hour discussing Texas's case. We've both been clear that Texas is out because they didn't look like a complete team all season. Yes, they have the 3 top 10 wins, first team since LSU to do it, but they also, lost to a trash ass Florida team. They had to win in overtime against Kentucky, Mississippi State, who are both bad teams this year, and it was miracle wins too. Like the Kentucky win was the worst Steve Sarkisian offensive performance we've ever seen. The Mississippi State game, they had a 99.4% probability to lose that game and had a miracle to come back. So that is why Texas is out. And they could have been in maybe last year if there wasn't such a strong bubble. That goes back to my original point. There were a lot of deserving teams this year. And sometimes you're just going to be left out when you could make a case. And that's kind of the beauty of sports, in my opinion. And I think that goes to another point I kind of have about the college football playoff discourse. It's so exhausting for me to go on social media and just see everyone talking about the referendums on the sport if certain teams are left out, where I know this is a pipe dream, but I wish it could be like, ooh, this is so exciting. Who's it going to be? Like, there's so many deserving teams. We don't know who's going to get in. This is college football at its finest. How crazy this is, the imperfect model. And instead, it is just so much like angst. And man, if the committee leaves this team out, they're going to blow up the sport. And I don't know. It's exhausting.
It's because it's not a playoff. They wrap it as a playoff, but it's not a playoff. And the logical gap between the beauty pageant that it is and the playoff that they purport it to be frustrates people, even if they don't realize it. In the high school playoffs, if you finish in the top 4 in your district, you are in. It doesn't matter if the 5th best team in this other district is better than the first place team. And we don't have those arguments. In the Division II, the Division III, the FCS, if you win your conference, you're in. You get an automatic bid for being one of those conference teams. It doesn't matter if the 3rd best team in the Southland is better than the 1st best team and enter another FCS conference. In the NBA, if you're one of the top 8 seeds in the East or the West, you get in. It doesn't matter if the 9th best team in the West is better than the 6th best team in the East. And we could keep going for every single sport except for college football. And until everybody who wins their conference championship gets in at the FBS level, it's a beauty pageant. And what kills me is that the ACC's stupid tiebreaker rules are why Miami couldn't play for the conference championship and beat Duke or Virginia and prevent this from happening. But it's the G5 that's going to be punished for it.
Yeah. Oh boy. Because after this year, G5 teams aren't getting in anymore.
I can tell you what's going to happen. This is exactly what's going to happen. I've been talking about it for weeks. They are going to make an artificial ledge to where you get an automatic bid if you are a conference champion, unless you're below, let's say, 15th.
Yeah.
And then they're just always going to rank them 19th. Right? They're going to create this bubble, and then they're going to be the ones who get to decide who's on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to blow this whole thing up because the 6th team in the SEC couldn't get into a 12-team field.
This is what's going to happen because Kirk Herbstreit laid it out pretty plainly, talking about the bright future that we all want this, Craven. Just the 16 best teams. So the 5 top teams get the buys, and then it's just, 6 through 16, because he said, of course, hopefully we get to 16 at this point. And then none of this, conference champion gets in with a higher seed. Just, we want the best teams. But while he lays it out to be so egalitarian for everybody, what that really means is Big Ten and SEC have bloated their conference. So they're going to have the vast majority of the top 16 teams. Then they can clean the strength of schedule and say, we've played all the best teams. That's why we don't get moved out of the top 16 unless we have 4 losses. And then we get a playoff that's 99% Big Ten SEC. Every team that has 3 losses gets in. And no G5 team ever gets in because they can't get in the top 16 anymore.
Yeah, it's a positive feedback loop. And what bothers me is that, I guess it bothers me that nobody saw it coming. I have been shouting on this version of this podcast for years and on Twitter that this is going to happen. They were going to expand the playoff under the guise of it'll allow the G5 in and the kind of smaller teams get a chance. But it's only taken, this is the second iteration of the 12-team playoff for them to already float the possibility and I would say the near certainty that the G5 is going to start getting excluded in one way or another. It was always going to be this way. Because the real issue is conference realignment. Most of the problems we have in this sport is because the conferences are too big and the talent is no longer spread out. The teams are no longer spread out to where they are this backfills in these conferences, to where if you're the 6th best team, you could be the best team in the Big 12 or the best team in the ACC. But nobody asked Texas. This is another example of wanting your cake and eating it too. Nobody asked you to go take more money to be in a tougher conference.
Yeah.
So you get to go take the money, you get to go take the prestige, you get to go take the TV time slots, and you don't want to be punished for it being harder.
The strength of schedule, though, Craven, the grind we have to go through every week.
You hear Texas fans on Twitter and Oklahoma fans on talk about how easy it would be to win the Big 12, given that Texas only won it once in the last 15 years that they were in the league. But even if we pass that up, right? A&M fans and Texas fans and Oklahoma want to tell you how easy the Big 12 was. Well, then just stay and win it. You didn't need more money. Texas didn't need more money. The money they're getting from the SEC isn't life-changing for Texas. They still would have been able to keep up. They would have been doing fine. Texas Tech's not getting that money. They're doing okay. Right? And so it's the having the cake and eating it too. And just I get that it's different than March Madness because 64 teams get in, but why don't we have all of these arguments? You know what I mean? It's do we just rank the best 64 teams in basketball and we only give them those spots? We're
probably about to, honestly, because they're going to push the NCAA tournament to 116 teams here pretty soon. It's
just never enough to feed the monkey. Mm-hmm. And it is always the little guys that have to shovel the shit. It's never the Blue Bloods' fault. It's never Notre Dame's for not being in a conference. It's never for Oregon and USC and Texas and Oklahoma for chasing the money. It's, James Madison's the villain and Tulane's the villain, and it's come on, man. If the SEC can get 5 in and you're mad that the other 60 in the G5, half of the FBS get 1 to 2 teams in, I don't know. Did you really care about the sport in the first place would be my question.
Yeah, I think the Texas piece is the only reason they're even a discussion at 9-3 is because they're in the SEC. So that is your baked in advantage. But they almost just want it to be a sure thing unless they completely implode. And it's basically Steve Sarkisian would have to put up a season that's worthy of being fired for us to not be in the college football playoff.
And what's funny is when this was expanding from 4 to 12, it was always well, there's real arguments for the 5th and 6th best team. We're never going to burn it down for the 13th, 14th, or 15th place team. If you lose 3 times, of course you're out of it. Why would anybody? And it's it took 2 years.
And that'll be the same thing when it's 16, and when they go to 24, we'll be talking about the 26th best team. That's Oregon 1 year on a new head coach. And it's like, how are we going to leave Oregon out at 7-5? You know, they on paper, they would beat the G5 team. So it's just going to, it's NFL now.
And I'm all for a 2014 playoff if the 10 conference champions get a guaranteed buy-in.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do that, Craven.
But they'll never do it. They'll never do it. And so
because how the 8th best Big Ten team would surely beat James Madison. So, like, if you really want to crown the best team, you just got to play the regular season again in the playoffs.
Right. I just love the idea that we need to know if the team that just lost by 21 yesterday to Georgia has a chance to win 4 in a row in the national championship, including likely beating Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Texas can't beat Georgia. We know that Alabama can't beat Georgia. Like, I don't know. It just seems so crazy.
The other argument of that too, though, and to play devil's advocate, is like, we probably know Tulane and James Madison can't beat those teams either. Tulane is playing Ole Miss in the first round, and they already got smoked by them beginning of the year.
Right, but there's not 3 other American teams in it or 3 other G5 teams in it. Like, there's already 4 or 5 other SEC teams in it by the time we get to the Alabama or Texas conversation.
Because then it's like, why would you even watch American football or Sun Belt football if they can't get into the playoff? Oh, wait. Oh, that's why.
Right.
So we don't have to watch them anymore.
Yeah. Maybe it's like in Europe, there's the Champions League. And the top 4 or 3 teams, depending on your league, you kind of get automatic qualifiers. And there are plenty of those teams that get into the Champions League that have no chance to win it. The champion's going to come from England, France, Spain, or Germany. And occasionally, Italy has a chance if they have a really defensive team. In March Madness, most of these teams don't have a chance. I mean, I get that there's more teams in it. But this idea that you have to, if the goal is to fill the bracket with only teams that are capable of winning the national championship, we should have never moved past 6. We should have never moved past 8. It was always to give more big teams a pathway to the playoff. And after year 1, we had to change the conference champion automatic bid because that didn't seem fair to the big dogs. Again, they were poor Alabama and Ole Miss and all that. Oh my God, Texas has to play a home game against Clemson before they can go get to the quarterfinal. And Arizona State doesn't belong and doesn't deserve the bye. And then they take them to overtime, and Texas needs like a 4th and 20 miracle to win that football game.
And a low-key bailout from the refs too.
We want to play these things on spreadsheets, and it just, I guess I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes. It's like, what happened to the game I love? Like, go win the games. Like, Alabama fans are being like, well, if we get left out of the playoff, why would he ever play in the SEC championship again? To win the SEC championship.
But that doesn't matter now, because the only thing that matters is winning the college football playoff and getting in the playoff.
That's whose fault is that? Right? Like, we don't have to live, like, you don't have to live that way. It's like Texas fans like, we'll never play Ohio State again. It's like, okay, well, enjoy paying thousands of dollars for season tickets to only watch San Jose State, UTSA, Sam Houston, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I just don't get, I don't get why we have to change the rules to benefit the teams that already have all the bid. It's like if the quarterbacks in the NFL started complaining about the rule changes over the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's like everything is geared towards protecting the quarterbacks. Like, what else do you have to complain about? Everything is geared to help Alabama and Texas and Notre Dame. And like, we have to change everything because James Madison's going to get blown out by Oregon. Last year, Oregon won the Big Ten championship and they were down 34-0 in their only playoff game. Like,
well, that was the G5's fault because Oregon had to play Ohio State in the first round.
Yes, right. We had to change the whole thing there. Like, it's just so, like, it's never going to be enough until it is a Big Ten SEC invitational, and like the Super League will take over. And then 5 or 10 years after the Super League has, and we just realize that we ruined the sport for like 90% of the people who enjoy it and play it, will go like, well, why'd we ever do that? And it's like, well, these conversations are why we did it.
Yeah, I think you made the right point when you're like it's played on spreadsheets, and as of course there's no college football commissioner, so it's all in the conference commissioners that really are just out for themselves. You hear Greg Sankey talk about we should have like 7 teams in the college football playoff. But it's basically like as these teams make so much investments in their roster because they get the most money from being in the SEC and the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. But it's like we have invested so much more than James Madison has. So therefore, we have done our part. We deserve to get in. That is where the disconnect comes in, where they want to take the beauty of sport out and the beauty of Goliath beating David. I mean, David beating Goliath sometimes, and college football just become like a shell of corporate America and TV money and ESPN and Fox, like pushing for their own conferences that they control the TV rights for. And these teams have spent the most money. Therefore, they shouldn't have any risk of not getting in the playoff for teams that don't spend enough money because they don't have the resources that their teams have. I don't know. It's all a crapshoot.
Well, the sport's too big. There's 136 teams. And because of the migration from some of the bigger brands away from the Big 12 and away from the Pac-12, the Big 12 and the ACC needed to backfill. And so they've brought everybody up. Cincinnati's now a Power 4 school. UCF's now a Power 4 school. Houston, SMU, like all that. BYU is now in a conference. Like all of these schools that used to populate the G5 and the independent ranks, like they're now Power 4 schools. And so we're getting a lot of like the Tulanes and James Madisons and North Texases of the world who maybe are 5 or 10 years ago, Tulane's always been there, but 10 years ago, maybe we're second tier G5 teams and there'd be better competition. But you only play 12 games and there's 136 teams. And now we have conferences that are close to 20 without divisions. Like the problem isn't James Madison or Tulane getting into the playoff. The problem is greed. The problem has always been greed. And until there's a way to stem that, it is never going to be enough. It is always going to have to expand. There are going to be they're going to add in play-in games like Petiti and the Big Ten have floated. It's all going to be that because they need more and more money. Mm-hmm. And the only way to make more money is with more inventory. And the only inventory are games. And so moving forward, maybe not next year, but eventually it's going to be number 3 or number 4 in the SEC versus number 8 in the SEC or what, you know what I mean? Like they're going to have 2 or 3 automatic buys. And then the next 4 or 5 teams are going to like play in games in the SEC and the Big Ten and maybe trickle on down. Like the regular season, which was the greatest to me, college football regular season was the greatest thing in sports. And we are taking dynamite to it in the name of like crowning this national champion. And maybe I'm just old and I watched the sport for long enough without needing a national champion. But this like incessant need to play tournaments in our culture just kills me. And I don't know why we had to change the sport to be more miserable than we ever were before. Like nobody's happy. Nobody's having a good time. Like who of these changes helped? Who feels like the sport is better in 2025 than it was in 2005?
It's helped the athletic departments.
Yes.
And SEC and the conferences, and it's helped ESPN and Fox. And Jimmy Sexton, the agent. Yeah. Again, we need to talk about the Texas teams in the playoff, but one of my last points too is you mentioned what Texas fans are rooting for them playing UTEP, Sam Houston, San Jose State only in the non-conference. And I think there are fans that are rooting for that so they can get in the college football playoff. But my argument for a lot of this is you're right, Craven. The regular season is a lot worse. And I think the fans are the ones who get boned at every step of the way, because we've made this point too about how fans are the ones who are funding the rosters now with the NIL money and the booster money. And then, oh, by the way, ticket prices have gone through the roof. And then, oh, by the way, I need 8 different streaming apps to even watch my team play.
Yeah.
And then now the games we play are against 3-directional schools so that we can have the best chance of getting the college football playoff. So the games we play suck now too.
So we can play a big game in December instead of a big game in September.
Yeah. That you won't be able to go to because it's going to cost $10,000 to get a ticket.
Because it's just for like Visa employees or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's like the Super Bowl where they just give away corporate tickets. Like I don't know. It just seems backwards. And I don't know why, as college football fans, we are like rushing to the guillotine so quickly. Mm-hmm. You know, like I don't want to get political. It just kind of mirrors like, yeah, it just is. I don't get it. Like we're eating our own tail and we're like wondering why the product sucks more and more and more. Like we should be talking about how Texas Tech has gotten into the playoffs for the first time ever and won a conference championship since the 1950s outright. Indiana just won the Big Ten. Like, what? I don't know. It just seems crazy that the conversation has to be about like if Notre Dame deserved to be in when they haven't beaten anybody in the top 25, or if Texas deserves to be in when the first 5 weeks of the season they didn't even look like a top 25 team, and then during 3 different SEC games that they won they looked really bad. It's a 12 data point thing, and we only want to talk about 4 of them. Like the 3 good ones is what we want to talk about, right? And like, yeah, I don't know. We get lost in this stuff, and it's because we have this obsession with the national championship that like, I mean, if you just read the history of college football, like it never was that big of a deal. It was never the biggest part of the equation.
That's why every team could claim one. Cause like there were 8 teams who had a claim to a national champion because they were all undefeated, but no one played for it.
But we all laughed at the ones that weren't AP national champion. You know what I mean? Like it didn't stop anybody from enjoying the sport. Like nobody's like, well, in 1973, so-and-so claimed the championship and that really ruined that season for me. Like, I don't know. It just, we created this whole mess and now we're mad that we're in the mess and everybody's miserable. And I don't know.
Well, my fiance made the correct point. I think when I was, watching the ACC championship and Duke beating Virginia. And so they're a 5-loss team that wins the ACC. And instead of the questioning after the game is like, oh my God, like, what does this say about your team that you were able to fight back and win the ACC, winning this conference against a rival like Virginia? My fiance is like, I love how every coach just has to go on the stump to campaign for the college football playoff immediately after all these games. I was like, I know. It's insane.
Because it's not a playoff. If it was a playoff, you wouldn't have to do that. Because you would just win or not win on the field. And based on the parameters that are set, you're either in or you're not in. You don't see Major League Baseball coaches having to do this, or NBA coaches or NFL coaches or Duncanville's head coach. Like Trinity's head coach doesn't have to do, like, it's an invitational. It's a beauty pageant. And we're packaging it as a playoff. And it's really just a television product that was built to like make the haves more money. And the haves are still upset about it. And I don't know. That's all I got.
All right. So, wow. Let's go into the Texas teams. I came in fired up, Craven. I knew you were going to be fired up too. Let's switch it to the actual playoff bracket now. Because look, for all intents and purposes, I think the committee has an impossible job. I know they didn't do a great job this year. Hunter Yurachek, I feel so bad for this man. Like he's basically the Dave Chappelle gif of like at the table getting interrogated, he just throws the water bottle down and gets up from the table. I don't know how anyone, after working a full-time AD job, has to get up there and argue for stuff he probably doesn't even believe is true because it was what the majority of other people thought. So I feel bad for the committee. I did think it was funny how Nick Saban was like, if you gave all this bullet points to AI would have a hell of a time trying to figure out what the right teams are. And then immediately after they come out with the bracket, he's like, they did it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went from
as he's sitting in Alabama's locker, like
sitting in his old coaching office that he never had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We went from potentially having 5 Texas teams in the playoff to having 2. And I agree there should have only been 2 Texas teams. Texas Tech gets the 4 seed. Reese Davis said it, man. The only bad thing about the first round bye is we don't get a home game in Lubbock.
Yeah, I had to cancel a hotel in Lubbock. Was bittersweet there. I think the disappointing part for Texas Tech good draw for the Red Raiders. You don't have Ohio State in the semis, and maybe this is still Indiana bias, and I just can't shake, my whole lifetime not taking Indiana seriously compared to Ohio State. But I think if you win the quarters and you go to the semis, you'd rather see Indiana than Ohio State. And so you get the negative part is I think a lot of Red Raiders wanted the Cotton Bowl. And instead you get the Orange Bowl because you're the 4 seed and there's kind of like a tier that it goes down. It's too convoluted.
You already got the home field advantage of the Big 12 championship. So
yeah. And now Oregon's got to fly literally across the country. Like I don't know if there's like 2 different parts of the country that are further away than Miami and Eugene, Oregon. Yeah. So it's
do have Stanford playing the ACC for them.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think if you're Texas Tech, you feel pretty good about this draw. It's been an awesome season for you, and there's nothing more to celebrate. I mean, getting to be in Miami on New Year's is not the worst thing in the world.
No, and then Texas A&M gets the 7 seed. I think there is some gripes here on the 7 seed. Like, should they have been in the 6 seed over Ole Miss? Because now they have to play Miami instead of playing Tulane. And A&M had the number 16 strength of schedule. Ole Miss had the number 41 strength of schedule. I know that's kind of a cherry-picked argument, but everyone else cherry-picks metrics. So that's just the one I found that supports A&M.
Yeah, I would say of all the teams that are hosting, A&M has the toughest route. I'd rather be the 8 seed than the 7 seed. I still think Ohio State's probably the best team in the country. I think there would be my pick to win the championship. And so instead of getting the 6 seed and getting to play one of the G5 schools,
Texas is in the Cheez-It Bowl against Michigan.
There you go.
Let's go.
That'll be a good one. A&M's got to go through Miami, then potentially Ohio State. And then if you get through that, you got Georgia. And then if you get through that, you got Indiana probably, right? So I do think the Aggies were given about as hard of a path as you could get as one of the top 8 seeds. But if you go back to August and you go, hey, A&M, we're going to give you 11-1 record. You're going to get to host a first-round playoff game. I don't think anybody inside that building argues with it. So I'm excited. We talked about how the one bummer for Texas Tech getting the bye is that there won't be a home game in Lubbock. The one cool part about A&M losing to Texas and not playing the SEC championship is there will be a first-round playoff game in Kyle Field against a legit big-time opponent in Miami. And maybe Alabama, Oklahoma will have, a big time atmosphere as well. But I would argue of those first round playoff games, like Miami at A&M is the one, like atmosphere wise, Kyle Field is going to be buzzing that morning. I just wish it wasn't at 11 a.m.
True. Do you think, I posed this question on Twitter X, but for Lane Kiffin, do you think he's mad that Ole Miss plays Tulane because Ole Miss is probably going to beat Tulane and they're going to win a college football playoff game without him? Or is he happy because LSU is paying his bonus money for Ole Miss winning playoff games?
I think it's going to make him happy, not just for the money, but because he can claim it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was Lane Kiffin's win.
Right. He built a roster at Ole Miss that's now gotten to the second round of the playoffs. So typical for SEC, I think he gets to take all the credit and he'll avoid all the blame because if they lose, it won't be Lane Kiffin's fault. He's in Baton Rouge. And so it's kind of a perfect analogy of what SEC football is right now.
Also, quick aside on the Texas-Michigan game, and I don't mean to be so Debbie Downer about the state of college football, but like there's a lot of this that sucks, and screw it, everyone else is being a Debbie Downer too, so let me hop on the parade. That Texas-Michigan game is an awesome matchup, and I don't know how many players are going to play in it, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a way to save the bowls. The only way to save the bowls, again, is to expand the playoff, which is why the playoff will get expanded because we have so many mouths to feed, including the bowl committees and the bowl reps and the bowl presidents and the bowl sites. And we've lost a lot of that. And so I do think we will get – I think there's going to be a way in which they expand it to where these bowls can survive a little bit more. But the bowls exist for gambling.
For sure. Oh, I'm going to throw it down on the Cheez-It Bowl.
Right. We all watch. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't have a life, but I watch them, right? Because like, what else am I going to do on December 27th? Like hang out with my family? Like, no. I'm going to watch a bowl game and put some shekels on it or whatever. And I do think the bowl games still get really good television ratings They just don't carry the stakes and the prestige and the aura in which they used to. And that's another thing that we ruined by having this like obsession with crowning a true national champion was the thing that started this whole.
Well, that's what the bowl games are for, is so you can talk about the game instead of uncomfortable conversation with your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like what a run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, can you believe what's happening
in the playoff?
Yeah, right, 100%. Absolutely.
I also
rematch of that 2005 Rose Bowl, which was tremendous.
Yeah,
2004 Rose Bowl.
I also like. I know I'm crapping all over like the state of college football, but I noticed too my hypocritical takes as we go through this podcast, because I'm talking about how not all the players are going to be playing in Texas, Michigan, and that stinks. So then it'd actually be a good thing if they, made that a playoff game. But that's what I was arguing against, is expanding the playoff that much. And then I was saying how the G5 is getting blamed for everything when that's not necessarily fair. But I also brought up the point that Ole Miss is going to beat Tulane because they already beat them. So Look, man, it's tough. There's not a lot of great solutions for me.
No, the sport does not exist in a fashion to where we can put this in a box. Like it is too big, and the teams are too concentrated. The FBS division is too big at 136 teams, and the conferences are too big, especially without divisions, to even know who the best teams are within a conference. Again, Miami just made the playoff without even playing in their conference championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M didn't play any of the other SEC teams that are in the playoff.
Yeah.
There are 5 SEC teams in the playoff. A&M has played none of them. Right? Yeah. None of the other 4. And that's not A&M's fault. It's just the schedule, and it's because it's too big. And so there's no way to know who the best teams are because you don't have enough data points with only 12 games. And you don't have enough cross-contamination, cross-pollination because of how many conference games there are. And you're not going to play a bunch of SEC versus Big Ten games in the only 3 games that you're not playing other teams in your conference, right? And so you're going to play a couple directional schools. You're going to play an FCS school or 2. You might play one signature non-conference game. But it's never going to tell us, like, you can, as a Texas fan, go, well, Texas Tech can't hang with us in the SEC. They would go 8-4 with our schedule. And there's no way to prove them wrong because you can't prove a negative. And the whole conversation about this sport has just become theoretical Excel sheet conversations. And I mean, that's not why I love this sport. That's never why I loved it. Like in 1992, when I was becoming a college football fan, it was never because of television ratings or which teams were in the conferences making the most money or who was eventually going to win the national championship. Like none of that came into account. But like, if you're a new generation of college football fan, like that's all you're ever going to worry about and think about and care about, because like that is all ESPN cares about. And they set the tone, and here we are.
All right, let's talk about
this sucks. Like it sucks.
This podcast sucks.
Well, it sucks. It just sucks that like, and I imagine it's not just this podcast. I imagine if you listen to all the other podcasts, like they're all going to have this kind of same where like we're talking more about how much this sucks than we are about how awesome this is.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the sign of a failed system. Like when you take something that the second biggest sport in this country is college football, only trailing professional football. You take the second best sport, the second most popular sport in the country that millions of people enjoy at 130 plus institutions across the country, and none of them are happy the day that the playoff is about to start. That tells you all you need to know about where college football is.
Well, it's also because we look at it on a spreadsheet graph and say, hey, let's make second most popular sport like most popular sports. So that way it can become more popular. But the reason the second most popular sport is second most popular is because it's different from the most popular. And that is a whole another societal like thing about that's why you only get superhero movies anymore, because those are what are proven to work. So they just keep pumping them out constantly. Just make everything the same.
And you can do that in the NFL because it's bite-sized. you can get enough. There's only 4 teams in each division, right? I think there's still only 4 teams.
Yeah, there's only 4.
I don't watch a lot of NFL football anymore. I got a kid, and like after college football duties are done, I can't also be like, I gotta watch the Texans play.
Brother, my NFL fantasy teams, it's actually commissioner, like manager malpractice based on how little I know about the NFL now.
So, but you got small divisions, small conferences, and a much smaller overall model of only 32 teams. And so the teams in the AFC East can play the same teams in the NFC, like there's a rotation with 2 other divisions, and you get this idea, and there's only 16 teams in each conference, and you're picking, I think there's 8 now that make the play, and so like there's a real cut and dry. If you go through it, you're not going to find a bunch of teams that have cases to have been in the playoffs that didn't make it. But because of the size of the sport, because of the size of the conferences, because of the discrepancies within the scheduling, you're just never able to just potato versus potato it. Everything is a potato versus tomato conversation. And it's all eye of the beholder conversation. Like the reason that people were arguing for Alabama to get in over Notre Dame and Miami, like BYU had the better metrics than those, and ESPN purposely didn't put BYU up in those conversations because it would have ruined the 3-team talk that they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like this is all politics. It is all a beauty pageant. It's all self-serving. Except for the fans, like the people it doesn't serve the most is the fans. And that's why everybody is miserable on what should be the start of the most exciting part of the season.
And the fans are the ones asked to like fund this the most, so they also serve the least.
Yeah. I mean, Tech's going to play in their first ever playoff game against Oregon, and they have to go all the way to Miami to do it. Like what? Like, I mean, golly, Indiana is going to play Alabama or OU and go to LA to do it when they could have gone to Dallas to do it or to Atlanta. It just makes no sense. No sense. Everything that you do. What is that Nate Bergese, like the Saturday Night Live thing where he's talking about America?
When he's George Washington,
he could do that for college football. And it would fit perfectly because every time you would ever be like, oh, so yeah, okay, so this is what you would do then. Oh, no. That is not what we would do. It's just a lack of leadership. It's burying your head in the sand forever. It's trying to put off all of the problems. And then you're like, well, why is this sport? So it's so stupid. It's so dumb.
So I think I'm going to make an early New Year's Eve resolution. I'm going to be positive vibes about the rest of the playoffs. I got all my hate and vitriol out of the way. And we do have some awesome games here. So,
yeah, we do have some awesome games. Like Alabama OU is going to be great. Oh, yeah, we already saw that. Tulane Ole Miss. We already saw that as well. Oregon James Madison has a 20-point spread. So we have Miami A&M. I think that's going to be a great first round game. And then when we get to the second round, it'll be awesome because it should have never gone past 8 anyway. So here we are.
Okay, Texas Tech. Let's talk about how they got here, the Big 12 championship. They dominate BYU again, 34-7. It is the first outright conference title since 1955. And Craven, you wrote on TexasFootball.com a column about Joey McGuire making his triumphant return to AT&T Stadium. He won high school state championships in 2013 and 2014 there. And I think it's poetic too because we spoke about it throughout the season. There were some questions about McGuire if he could handle this roster throughout the year. And I think his high school background actually made him the perfect coach for Tech's dream season.
Yeah, I do too. I think he is better made for the job he has than the one he was hired for because he is now just the head coach of Cedar Hill. At Texas Tech, right? Like what he does. Like I think Joey would admit himself, like he's not the X's and O's guru. He's not giving you a schematic advantage. He gives you a cultural advantage, right? He gives you a character advantage. And everybody talks about how much money Texas Tech has spent, but they spent it well. Like Jimbo bought the most expensive class of all time. And he was fired 2 years later, and none of those guys were still on the roster because he spent it poorly. Like those defensive linemen that everybody's like, oh man, they went to the portal and just snagged all those defensive linemen. One is from Stanford, one is from Houston, one is from UCF, and one is from Georgia Tech. none of them cost what Ohio State's defensive line cost or what Texas's front seven cost. Their linebackers are a dude who had to walk on after being a quarterback at West Virginia who just won the Butkus Award, John Curry and Ben Roberts. Their safety came from North Dakota State. Their best corner came from Mississippi State. So, like, again, like Texas Tech spent a bunch of money. They have oil billionaires. Like, they're not running from it. They're not shying from it. Like, they lean into it, and I think that's great. But it's not like they went and raided Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia's rosters for these guys. Like, they were smart. They got them on the rebound. They spent money on the positions that you need to spend money on. And same thing along the offensive line. Like, the offensive line transfers that they brought in are from, like, North Carolina and, like, Miami of Ohio and stuff. And so Memphis, Davion Carter's from Memphis. And so all credit to Texas Tech for taking advantage of the landscape of college football, not shying away from it. And I've always joked with them that they're like Rodney Dangerfield and Caddyshack, right? Where it's like the stuck up judge doesn't want them in there, but who gives a rip? Go have fun. And
a golf bag that has, the stereo on it. And...
Right. But what I think is interesting about this is Texas Tech is not only playing for Texas Tech. Like, they are playing for the Big 12 and kind of the non-blue bloods of this sport. And if Oregon wins that first round and then they go and they pants Texas Tech in the way Ohio State won in the first round, they went and pantsed Oregon, the conversation is going to look much different. That won't just be about, oh, well, in one game, you never know what's going to happen. Like, it will be a referendum on the Big 12. And I think Texas Tech has to carry that flag in the same way Clemson used to have to carry it for the ACC.
Because it's like, brother, the Big 12 is closer to the Sun Belt and American as a conference.
At least in perception.
SEC.
And the ACC absolutely is. Like, if the rules from last year still existed, we would have the second year in a row that the G5 champion would be the bye, not the ACC champion. Right? Like, that's the point that I'm trying to tell college football fans is, like, unless you're in the SEC, unless you're in the Big Ten, you should be very scared about what's happening in this sport, because it's not just James Madison and Tulane they want to get rid of. They want to get rid of you too. And so I don't know. I think anyway, I think
that's why Texas Tech spent all this money.
100%. 100% to be seen as, well, we spend too much money to be grouped in that same way. Clemson, Miami, like, those type of teams aren't counted in terms of the ACC. Like, they're talking about the other teams. So I do think I think Texas Tech is not only playing for the Red Raiders, I think they are playing for the Big 12 and kind of the non-SEC Big 10 brands in the same way Miami is. Because if Miami loses big to A&M and Texas Tech loses big to, let's say, Oregon in the second round, and this just becomes an SEC Big 10 thing down the street, like, buddy, the narratives are going to be narrating. And so I think it's a really important game for Texas Tech in the quarters in Orange Bowl to kind of, I don't know, stop the naysayers. Not only about, like, them and what they are, but also the league in which they play in.
I think their defense gives them a chance to make a run in the college football playoff. I mean, so they allow in that BYU game the first point on an opening drive all season. BYU's first drive is 14 plays, 90 yards, and BYU the rest of the game has 110 yards and 4 turnovers. Insane. I know I want to talk about Ben Roberts first because of his 2 awesome interceptions, but then let's spin it to Jacob Rodriguez too. And I'm not trying to be a Texas homer here. I really think he deserves to be a Heisman, not only candidate, but maybe talked about as one of the top 3 guys, maybe a front runner, because he is emblematic of the story of the college football season. And the other 2 guys are Indiana's quarterback and Ohio State's quarterback. And full disclosure, I didn't watch much of that game yesterday because I was getting back from calling a high school game, but that game's 13-10 yesterday. So it's not like those guys are necessarily lighting it up in the conference championship game.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech has the defense to play with everybody. That linebacker core doesn't get the credit it probably deserves. I think it's starting to get the credit it deserves because so much of the attention went on the defensive line. But BYU did a good job of handling Romello Height, handling David Bailey for the most part. Lee Hunter got disruptive. Anthony Holmes had some big, but you didn't see David Bailey and Romello Height with like 3 sacks each or something. It wasn't that kind of dominating thing. Tech's good at every level. Cole Wisniewski's a really good safety. Bryce Pollock's a really good cornerback. The front seven is excellent. I don't think anybody is going to bully Texas Tech defensively. The thing that might keep Texas Tech from winning a national championship, in my opinion, will keep Texas Tech from winning the national championship, is just the pass game. I don't think Baron Morton is not completely healthy. So some of that's not on Morton.
When has he ever been completely healthy?
I don't think that they have just the explosiveness in the passing game to threaten a Georgia or an Indiana, maybe even an Oregon. Like, they're going to have to win the way, and maybe nobody else does either, right? I mean, like, to your point, Indiana, Ohio State was 13-10 yesterday. Maybe this year of college football is going to be defensive, and whoever wins the national championship is just going to be the best defensive team and doesn't turn the football over. So maybe Tech has a chance in all of these games because they're going to be low scoring. But they don't have a wide receiver that scares me. They don't have an offensive weapon outside of maybe Cam Dickey that would scare me as a defensive coordinator. And I just don't know there were so many throws. Baron Morton had a great throw to Coy Aiken in that first touchdown. But there were so many other throws where you look and you're like, where was that going? Like, what throw was that? And I do think some of it is health and not being able to kind of plant and kind of really use your mechanics in the right way. But I do think that's the thing that keeps me from saying Texas Tech is a legitimate national championship contender. And maybe I need to get off that because all the other offenses have holes too.
And then North Texas had a chance to get in the CFP with a win in the American Conference Championship game, but 5 turnovers, 5 sacks. That's what did them in. The score is 34-21, falling to Tulane. It really wasn't that close. I think Tulane was up like 31-7 at one point. Do you want to start with where North Texas did themselves in or where the officials did them in?
Just with North Texas, I guess, I think sometimes, not necessarily on this podcast, I think we're pretty straightforward on how football can be a pretty simple sport. We overcomplicate things a lot of times, and we could spend 20 minutes breaking down North Texas, Tulane, and I definitely think the referees and the 14 points that they spotted the green wave played a part in it. But North Texas's 11 wins, they turned the ball over a combined 7 times. In both losses, they turned the ball over 5 times, like 10 turnovers and 2 losses, 7 turnovers and 11 wins. North Texas's whole thing all year was winning the turnover battle and scoring a bunch of points. And you're not going to do that when you give away the ball 5 times and you don't take it away at all. So, I mean, I think the referees were bad, but I think North Texas was worse.
Yeah, I agree with you. And some of those turnovers were a little bit of like bad luck, or I don't know if they were bad luck, but just like uncharacteristic. I'd say Caleb Hawkins fumbles when he hasn't. Basically, I think his forearm got shattered.
He got hit hard.
He didn't even return to the ball game. So I mean, he probably doesn't fumble if his forearm doesn't shatter. Wyatt Young, who's been just sensational all season, most reliable receiver by far. He has that ball tip off both his hands twice, and one of them was a pick 6. Another was one that could have been a touchdown instead of an interception. So uncharacteristic, bad luck. You're not going to win getting sacked 5 times, turn the ball over 5 times.
Yep.
But also
not on the road.
Not on the road too. But also the officials. Okay, first off, you mentioned the road. UNT fans did have some gripes that like this game was the home game for Tulane. That's neither here nor there in terms of the officials, because Tulane's first touchdown comes after Retzlaff just basically fumbles the ball out of the back of the end zone on 3rd and goal, getting his arm hit, and they rule it incomplete, and they score on the next play. That's their first touchdown. And then on the Tulane punt at the end of the first half, Tulane just rocks North Texas punt returner. Like, before the ball is even on its downward descent, that's a penalty in every rule book.
I think the referees lost track of who the actual punt returner was because it happened so early and he wasn't like getting ready. Usually that penalty happens because the guy's getting ready to catch the punt and then he's blasted. Yeah. I think it was such kind of a pooch punt and Sides was so far away from it and he was starting to get over there that the referee didn't even like didn't even account for him as the punt returner.
It was
just
actually
a gunner.
It was so egregious that it actually worked out in Tulane's favor.
That's what I think. Yes.
Because the ball then bounces off a North Texas guy. Tulane recovers it, goes up 24-7 at half. That should have been a penalty, North Texas ball, and it's 17-7 at half at worst.
Yeah, and then that pick six, that fumbles out of the back of the end zone that Mestamaker makes the hit on, that shouldn't have counted. That looked like a clear fumble. Even the announcers were pretty confused about that one as well. So definitely not a good showing by the officials, and they are lucky that North Texas turned the ball over 5 times and couldn't block Tulane, or that's the only thing we'd be talking about. But North Texas played poorly enough to where it didn't feel like the only thing that cost them, even though that game does look differently, obviously, if those calls go the other way. But I just don't think North Texas could handle the physicality of Tulane. Like, Tulane was just better along the lines of scrimmage, bullied North Texas, and same against South Florida. That's what led to the turnovers. Messamaker didn't have as much time. The throws are a little bit off. There's physicality in the back end. The wide receivers tipping balls, not catching it, coming across the middle, that kind of stuff. Like, Tulane just bullied North Texas and won that game.
How much of that game do you think is Eric Morris not like taking the Oklahoma State job, working 2 jobs right now, probably not as prepared? How much of that is just North Texas loses that game often and they got screwed by the refs and they had uncharacteristic turnovers?
I think the game just went into Tulane's favor. Like, if North Texas is able to get up 21-7 and make that into a shootout, I think it starts to spin towards North Texas. But Tulane's advantage was the physicality along the lines of scrimmage, and they were able to exploit that the way that the game just played out. I don't put too much on the Oklahoma State Eric Morris stuff because the coach on the other sidelines going to Florida. And there's probably more pressure to get going at Florida than there is to get going at Oklahoma State. And so I think they were both kind of equal there, and Tulane just played a better game on Friday night. They punched North Texas in the mouth, and the Mean Green just weren't able to respond. And, they also had the bad calls goes against them. It was just one of those perfect storms. And that's how sports goes. It's football.
That's how football go sometimes. All right. That's going to do it for our CFP discussion, in conference championship discussion. Any big thoughts out the door, Craven?
5 of the 7 Power 4 conference teams in this state have made the playoffs since 2022. Awesome. So that is pretty impressive. The only 2 that haven't were Baylor and Houston. Houston joins the Power 4 in 2023, and Baylor would have made a 12 team in 2021. So while it was disappointing to only get 2 in, we could have had 3, 4, as many as 5 a month ago. I still think it shows that Texas is kind of the new epicenter. Like, when I was growing up, it was Florida with Miami, Florida, and Florida State. When my younger brother in that generation was growing up, it was kind of California with USC kind of dominating it. I feel like it's Texas's time, and only getting 2 teams, with it being Texas Tech and Texas A&M, kind of 2 new bloods in there with it. I think it shows that there's an ability for Texas to really be successful at multiple different stops, multiple different places in the near future, for sure.
It's Texas time, and we got you covered for all of it. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates, signing off the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast.